From Wyoming.
Thank you, Madam President. I come to the floor to join my colleague from Indiana and to congratulate him on those remarks, which would be most certainly well received in Wyoming and reflect the feeling of the people of my state in terms of the reckless tax and spending process in which the Democrats are engaged. And I come today to the floor to oppose what the Democrats are trying to do in terms of adding money to the debt, additional spending, a bill that has been described in so many ways. I read it, and to me it is reckless, it's extreme, it's scary to talk about the sort of things that the Democrats are trying to impose on the American people. And when we take a look at what happens with this national debt, that folks on Medicare and on Social Security are concerned are going to get undermined, those wonderful programs that work for so many people, because of the debt, the growing debt. How are we going to address it? Well, the suspension of the debt ceiling expired a month and a half ago. Less than 2 weeks later, Democrats passed a blueprint for the largest spending bill in the history of the United States. Over $3.5 trillion. People looked at it and say, how much it is? And they said, oh, Democrats may say $3.5 trillion. It's a lot more than that. More than America spent in World War II to win the war. This is in addition to the $2 trillion already spent and added to the debt by this administration on a party line vote earlier this year. So America's debt is now over $28 trillion. We're on our way to $30 trillion. You divide out by the number of men, women, and children in America, it's approaching $100,000 per individual. It's going to have to be paid back ultimately to Wall Street, to Japan, to China, to those that hold our debt. And the problem when you look at a debt that large and say, how do you put that into perspective, is how much interest are we paying on the loan? People that borrow money for a car or a home know how much interest they're paying on the loan. And for the United States, it's approaching $400 billion interest on the loan a year. And this is at record low interest rates. Well, where's that money coming from? You get nothing in return for it. But Democrats seem to think we need to just keep spending money and borrowing money to pay for the reckless spending. They don't want voters to know about it. They don't want voters to know how much money. They're asking for an unlimited ability to spend until after the 2022 election. That's what's coming over from the House. It said, don't ask us. We're not going to tell you. We're just going to keep on spending like there's no tomorrow all the way through a date after the 2022 election. They want to cover all this spending by suspending what is called the debt ceiling so they can borrow as much as they want. Well, it's not going to happen. Can't have it both ways. They try to spend trillions of dollars. They're going to be responsible for the consequences of that spending. Republicans are not going to give Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi a blank check, period. We are not going to give them a rubber stamp to their reckless spending. The Democrats want to raise the debt ceiling. They have the capacity to do it on their own, and they will need to do it on their own. Republicans are not going to participate. The Democrats have been in charge of Washington now for 8 full months. They have complete control. The House, the Senate, the White House. During all that time, haven't raised a finger to lift the debt ceiling. Instead, they had the Secretary of the Treasury send a letter. She said the Treasury will run out of money in October. It's now September 22nd. The clock is ticking. Democrats chose not to raise the debt ceiling when they passed their $2 trillion addition to the debt earlier this year. They called it COVID release. Less than 9% of the money actually went for medical care. They chose not to raise it as part of this over $3.5 or $4 trillion spending bill that is being proposed as a result of Bernie Sanders' socialist budget. And Democrats think that the American people can keep spending money in such a reckless way. They're playing chicken with our economy, think they can fool the American people. It's not going to work. Republicans are not going to be held hostage by the Democrats, and the American people should not be either, or be put on the hook. Democrats have enough votes to spend trillions of taxpayer dollars, then they have enough votes to raise the debt limit. This is Democrat debt. It is Biden, Schumer, Pelosi debt. Senate Republicans will not vote to burden future generations or to undermine Social Security and Medicare today with this kind of reckless spending. We're not going to vote for the spending bill, not one of us. Not going to vote to raise the debt limit on Democrat terms. If they want to go it alone on spending, the Democrats can go it alone on raising the debt ceiling. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.